Guys, I have been a fan of My Hero Academia since the very beginning. From the release of the very first chapter that absolutely enchanted me to years later with over 300 chapters to its name. Horikoshi is a special sort of manga talent. That much was evident with even his previous works and the like. And at this point, if there's one thing that I know as such a dedicated follower of this series, it's that Horikoshi cannot hold his tongue. This is a man so in love with his creations and world that he will openly divulge pressing or unrevealed information whenever he is given the chance. I can't tell you the number of theories and predictions we've been able to accurately surmise on this channel thanks to the tellings of this mangaka. I love all manner of shonen stories, but never have I ever come across a circumstance like this. If you have been keeping up with the channel as of late, then you would have seen our recent End of My Hero Academia video. In it, we spoke of an interview with Horikoshi that occurred not too long ago, wherein he details some major plot points and concepts dealing with the end of the series as we know it. Well, things just got a whole lot deeper on account of the various art pieces presented within the most recent art exhibit for the series. With it, we have a number of drawings worthy of further intrigue and speculation, all of which you can find on our Instagram page at PlotArmorYT. But you can definitely be on the lookout for more videos on this stuff, but with this one in particular, I would like to discuss this piece of art featuring Aoyama. This is a very ominous shot to me. This elicits dread, evil, and the alien. Here we have this purple-eyed blob creature forcing itself beyond certain confines with Aoyama in close proximity. Now, Aoyama isn't exactly a character typically focused upon, and so to have him here with something so disturbing sends a very peculiar message. The imagery is a bit blurry here, but let's take a closer look at Aoyama himself. Despite the entity and presence behind him, it's not as if he's taking pride in its existence. Aoyama is a very exuberant and flamboyant character, yet here, his posture is slouched, his expression somber and cape draping. This isn't something he's proud of or happy about, but it's with him nevertheless. A plot point we have yet to properly conclude would be that of the UA traitor, one of the earliest conflicts in the entire series. It has at this point compromised our cast on more than one occasion, and certain precautions and measures have been taken to combat it, but even still, after all this time we have yet to pin down the actual perpetrator. With this in mind, we have had certain scares with Aoyama in the past, particularly in the case of his cheese surprises for Deku. A circumstance which ultimately concluded with his summation that he and Deku are similar as those with ill-fitting quirks. This instance ended in humor and assumed misunderstanding, but let's assume that there's more to this. What exactly can we glean? Well, Aoyama explains that his belt is a sort of inhibitor on his quirk, as otherwise it may at times spontaneously shoot out inadvertently. He furthermore went on to say that the issue is hereditary, that his body isn't meant for his quirk. This is peculiar to me for a few reasons. Firstly, there's nobody else in the class, or hell the series for that matter, where such a bodily situation may be applicable, at least not in the case of natural born quirk wielders. To bear this similarity to Deku, the possessor of a bestowed quirk, is fascinating. Why? Because the only other quirk we have known to be comparable to One for All would be that of All for One. All for One being a quirk of providence. In fact, back during the early days of the meta-human phenomenon, All for One took quirks from many and bestowed them elsewhere. To what end? Loyalty. These people were to lay in wait until they were deemed useful. This sort of deal, however, was something his younger brother, the first possessor of One for All, would warn against. He spoke of an inability to take it back. Sure, his brother was nefarious, but why was this such a big deal? Perhaps this is the eventual complication to be found through such transference, or at least a part of it. Quirks are intrinsic to a person's very being. They are so deeply rooted in who a person is that to suddenly move that elsewhere is sure to have some sort of ramification. To then have such an issue be passed down over generations of quirk wielders, you may allow such a problem to fester into something far worse. As I have expressed in previous videos, I don't imagine the UA traitor to be intentful or willing in their injustice, and seeing this visual of Aoyama, I certainly get that impression as well. Past this, Aoyama is one of the very first students we came to meet in the series. Besides of course Bakugo, we then have Uraraka and Ida. These two would then go on to become Deku's primary friend circle, whereas Aoyama remains somewhat estranged from the entirety of his class, having no particular friend group or clique to call his own. What's more is that he admitted to observing Deku during the entrance exam. He has had his eye on this kid who has been comparable to All Might since day one. Perhaps in the beginning this may have been of his own volition and inconsequential, but beyond that, perhaps not. The truly terrifying thing about All For One is his overwhelmingly powerful will. The only power able to contest such a thing being the quirk One For All. When All For One had his quirk provided to Shigaraki, what we came to witness was the emergence of a parasite. The will of All For One is consuming. Again, quirks are intrinsic to one's very being. All For One has the ability to make such quirks his own, which is to say that this isn't some one-to-one transference. No, this is like running water through a dirty pipe, which is to furthermore say that when All For One provides a quirk to someone, his will goes along with it. Back during his conversation with his younger brother, All For One spoke of how his friends bombed a building that housed a number of metas that opposed him. He furthermore spoke of how such a thing was not by way of his own orders, but rather they, quote, move as if according to his will. When it comes to Shigaraki, he currently is possessed by the will of All For One, despite All For One proper being a different entity entirely. But regardless, the will continues to pursue the very same agenda. An agenda which All For One proper, despite being in the depths of Tartarus, the most secure prison state in the country, was able to sense was going according to plan. It's not as if he was keen on the precise details, but listen, when working off of the assumption that another you is out there, it's not too difficult to surmise what may be transpiring. This would then explain why the traitor hasn't taken any more brazen moves. If you notice, both incidents may be considered to be location-based. With the USJ incident, Kurogiri's Warp Gate quirk requires specific coordinates to make such a trip. It wasn't as if they simply infiltrated UA, they came to this particular location in the school at this specific time. The same may be said for the Forest Training arc. The students were unaware of the destination, but once again, it's as simple as checking for a signal. Guys, how do you catch a traitor that doesn't know that they themselves are a traitor? Regardless of whatever precautions are put in place, it's not as if there's any sort of communication or strange behavior that may be detected. And so beyond the UA traitor, this is the true power of All For One. For Horikoshi to have placed Aoyama in chapter 3 and only have the reasoning be brought up in a single chapter what was 165 chapters later is bizarre in of itself when considering how the placements of Ida and Uraraka, for instance, were capitalized upon almost immediately after. My Hero Academia was not originally intended to go on for this long. Horikoshi was more than likely laying the foundation for an earlier reveal, but thanks to the success of the series, was able to further elongate and flesh out certain elements into what is now such a seemingly elaborate scheme. Now, something you may come to recognize about this channel is that when dealing with theories and such, we do our best not to jump the gun. We avoid jumping to conclusions prior to meeting a certain threshold of plausibility and or evidence. Instead of rushing towards any low-hanging fruit, we aim to bring you content you won't find anywhere else. The UA Trader situation has been going on since the very beginning of the series, and if you notice, on the channel, although we may have mentioned it in passing, never have we ever made a dedicated video on the subject. The last thing we want to present to you all are a number of contrivances. Back when the channel was a bit smaller, we had some people saying that we were just grasping at straws when it came to theories that have since been proven correct. This isn't to say that our summations are infallible or indisputable, but at the very least, we are very peculiar about what we provide to you guys. Hopefully you can appreciate that, and appreciate it enough to subscribe to Plot Armor with notifications on so you don't miss any of these sorts of videos. And if you'd like to take a further look at all of the art pieces currently available, go ahead and check out our Instagram and Twitter pages at PlotArmorYT for all of that. Because when it comes to bringing you some of the best My Hero Academia content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. As always, I am SliceBotaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.